how does influence really work? It kind of has a proposition that words are magic. And in a way, I get it. There is kind of something seductive, I think, to most of us about that kind of idea. Perfect phrase said at the right exact moment. And that suddenly, as soon as we say that, doors will open, deals are going to close, money is going to fall from the sky. It's a really nice, clean story. The problem, though, is that it's also incomplete. If you've ever watched someone that had almost like a perfect kind of technique, all of the cadence and the delivery, the conversation completely bombed. The people didn't feel connected to them. And this is the thing that most people miss. The success or failure of any human interaction, it's going to ultimately come down to three factors. Let's look at what's the most fundamental variable, what's the most important thing. It's really going to be self-mastery. If we look at the most influential people in the world, whether this be celebrities or podcast hosts, prominent politicians, they're not using the same words. They're not even using the same cadence or vocabulary. The first thing that matters more than anything else is the person who is doing the talking. Their personal authority over themselves, their confidence, their composure, the way they move, the way they put together the intent that's kind of sitting behind their eyes when they look at you. All of those little pieces are going to shape how the message lands before any actual words are even processed in your brain. And I'd be willing to bet that you've seen this in action. You saw maybe someone make a joke that lands perfectly, and in the back of your mind, without even really having to think about it, that if you said the exact same thing, it would almost definitely go sideways and people would not think it was funny. Could be the same exact words, maybe to even a similar audience, but it would be a completely different result. And that gap, that space, is what self-mastery really comes down to. We have something at NCI called MASSI, which stands for movement, appearance, connection, comfort, and intent. You can have every single element of self-mastery dialed in and just completely still miss the mark. This is where we get into observation, otherwise known as behavior profiling, where it doesn't matter how confident you are, doesn't matter how clear your intent is, how you're dressed, or how steady your eye contact is. All the self-mastery on the planet is not going to override that fundamental mismatch of identity between what you're offering and who you're offering it to. The good news is that most of us have a version of this already. Human beings are born at birth with an ability to understand and read emotions long before we learn anything about language. We all have some capacity to read the room and to pick up on signals that tell us how someone is wired and what they need from an interaction. Just like maybe you talk to your mom a little bit different than you talk to your kids, than you talk to your friends kind of from high school. But what I want you to understand is the better that your behavior profiling skills are, the better your ability to read body language and understand psychological profiles and culture and context. And all of these things allow you to be more targeted and more efficient and more specific with your communication, which is the next piece of this puzzle. It's the final piece, but for many people in a lot of training systems, it's the only piece. So once we have an ability to control ourselves and we have authority and autonomy over ourselves, we have a good degree of confidence that's being demonstrated through that MASSI, and we can deeply understand the person in front of us. This is where communication really starts to enter the chat. And this is where, in my mind, things get interesting. The words we choose, as we talked about at the beginning, do carry massive weight. But even deeper than the words themselves is the understanding of the architecture of how influence works. At NCI, we have models like the FATE model, the PCP model, the 6-axis model. And what these do is they map out these fundamental structures for us. If you are interested, again, not a sales pitch, but we do have courses at NCI that go into great depth of this. Because we know that these models exist and we know they're real and we know how they work, it lets us to be able to perform an executive analysis of fundamentally what makes influence happen in the human brain and what stops it from happening. The magic isn't hiding in some kind of secret phrase, and it's not some line that you just haven't found yet that's hiding in the deep annals of the internet. It lives, the magic really lives inside of these three elements: the self-mastery, the observation, and the communication, which are creating a psychological state in the other person where influence just becomes the natural result. Influence happens well before you ever ask something. You don't need a secret phrase saved for some kind of final moment. Once the right state has been created in the person that you're talking to, all you've got to do is just ask. That's it. You could literally just say, hey, let's go do this thing. You can understand everything that we talked about today. You might have a great understanding now of how it works. This is going to change your life in its practical sense about 0.125% if you don't actually go and implement it. This is the difference between knowledge and information. And information without skills is essentially like a cool bar trick. I see this more often than you can imagine, where people can explain to you how something works and why it works, but they have no ability to do it themselves. They haven't spent the time to actually develop their own confidence and their own self-mastery and their ability to actually clearly see the world around them. One other thing I'd love for you to walk away with is go out and practice this stuff. We're putting out videos here every week at NCI University. I hope that you can take these skills, go start using them in your life, just start getting better results for yourself and the people around you, and hopefully helping to make the world just a little bit of a better place, because that's really our goal and the dream of mine and the dream of Chase at NCI University. Take care, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me.